Welcome and thank you for joining me. We're going to be building this stool using some pretty basic tools, mainly hand tools. If you watched my last video, I did a very similar stool to this one using some power tools, but this video is pretty much a request, and I'm doing this one with pretty much only hand tools. So thank you for joining me, and let's get started. So the last one I did with the power tools, I did 16 inches. I think this one I'm going to do 14. I think 14 will be a good in between. The one I made was 12, and the one I made for our family is 12, and the one I did for another video was 16, and I'm going to go with 14 on this one. So I do like to mark with a pencil, and then I'm going to scribe here to get that line. So I'm not worried about tear out or anything on this side. I would prefer to be able to see the line and make my cut on the non-project side. But I'm going to kind of look over, and not that this is very thick. It's not going to do much other than pick off a smidge, but now I'm cutting these are going to be for my legs here. So I'm really, this is going to be the width. So I really want what I want is the bottom of the legs to be the same width, and then they'll taper into the actual stool top here. So yeah, so what I'm just going to do is measure for the width, and just do the same thing, make my pencil mark. And just zip this right down in half. I did on the fly, change my mind. So this is the top. I'm gonna, because I have this still here, this little setup, which you see, I just have a clamp here that's clamped into my vise on my table. So that way I can make the cuts this way, because I don't have a vise that goes on the front of my table here. I just have this one, and so that's how I have. That's how I make these cuts. And because I'm going to leave this set up there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut for my stretchers here. So I'm going to cut to the length. I've got a 14 inch, so I want to find out how long. If I leave an inch on each side, then I can do plus the thickness, and I'm not like 3/4 of an inch thick. So I've got inch and a half of material. Inch and a half of material minus 14, so I'm at 12.5 inches minus the material, and I want to do what did I say? 1 inch in from each. I think that'll be okay. Yeah, I think that'll be good. 1 inch in. So now I'm go from 12.5 to 10.5. I've got my top and the apron pieces, and then the legs cut. So now I just got to rip the legs and the apron.
So if you noticed, I changed my mind once again, and I am ripping the legs and the little aprons or stretchers, or whatever you want to call them, the exact same method, which is that clamp. I'm just using that same method and ripping those, so I didn't have to change anything after all. And if you notice, I'm actually cutting that knot piece out because I didn't want that included in there, and it just happens that I had enough material that I can cut that out and not have to deal with it. I was having some audio issues while I was recording, so now you get to hear my voiceover on this. One method to get these pieces even is to just tape, a piece of sandpaper on there. I would recommend something a little bit more aggressive than what I'm using here. Maybe a 60 grit, and put them together. Then the other way that I decided to go with was just clamping those together and just using a hand plane and playing those down. The key is to make sure that they're square, at least one side. The side that's going to be up against the top of the stool, make sure that that's going to be flush and square. The bottom part, you're going to be doing a round over, you'll see later. But yeah, as you see, I'm just kind of making sure both of them are square together, take them out of the clamp, and verify that way too. And the way that I'm doing it here, I just kind of, clamp them together with those little spring clamps or whatever, and yeah, just clamp it into that vise. It actually works really well to hold them together so they don't adjust. And you see my vise is a little bit wonky. I have issues with it, but you just got to keep clamping it down. But it is what it is, and getting the job done. Yeah, I should probably also clarify, I'm doing both the legs right now as well as the stretchers or aprons or whatever you want to call them. So these are the two little stretcher pieces here. I was doing the legs before. With the legs, you do want to make sure that you get both sides nice and square. And regardless of whether you just sand everything down or you plane it, it's probably a good idea just to put them together and make sure that everything's nice and smooth. Yeah, this is just the way that I did it. You can do it a little different. And now I'm doing the angle for the legs. I decided to go with a 15-degree angle on the legs here. I think I did on my other stool that I made the video for. I think I did a 12.5-degree angle, but I'm doing a 15 on this one. And I was still having some of the audio issues, so I think I was trying to explain things in the video, but yeah, I'm making sure that with that 15-degree angle, that everything's going to line up the way I want it to. As you see, I kind of have that stool upside down right now, and just kind of running everything across there and making sure that it's going to be looking the way that I want it to. And then I angle down. I'm measuring from that corner because I do want the base to be the same width as the stool itself. And now I'm just going to cut those, cut the angles for the legs. And I am using that saw that I have has one side for rip cuts, the other side for cross cuts. So I'm using the cross cut side on here. And it wasn't a pencil or a pen that you saw me using to mark the angles there. I was actually scoring those. So just, I'm not, like I said, I'm not too concerned with tear out or anything like that, but it does help regardless of how you do it. It just helps keep your saw blade or your saw just in line with your marking, and your it keeps your cut true and straight instead of running along with the grain or anything like that. So here I found circular object that I can use to mark the little arch or arc, whatever, for the bottom. And you'll see later this piece, whatever if you do it this way, it's going to come in handy later when you're cleaning it up. And now I'm just using a coping saw, just following along my marks there. Just made sure that it was, centered on between the two pieces. And this this coping saw has the blade has seen better days, so I was having some issues with the gunk and stuff on there, but it worked out. I need to get a new blade. Um, and so now you see the reason that I like having something that's cylindrical, not just a flat object, but now you can use that same object that you took or that you marked with, and just I put some sandpaper around it, and now I'm using that to clean up my cut marks and everything if you're doing it by hand. There's a lot of other methods you can do. I think I'm going to show you here in a little bit. But this is going to, be the best way to make sure that everything is the same, that same cylindrical shape. And also, you can get a file or a rasp. You see, I have my Dremel style tool there as well. Yeah, once again, I'm explaining things that I was having audio issues with. And that other piece, it's actually a Dremel style tool there too, but it just has a um, larger brush. That one's an 80 grit there, and I think the smaller one I have on that Dremel style is I think a 120 grit. Maybe it might be an 80 as well, but whatever tools you have that can clean that up. Maybe you clean up the bulk of it with a rasp or a file or a Dremel tool or something, and then just come in with your sandpaper and your cylinder that you marked it with and clean up the just clean up the clean it up, I guess.
All right, so this is where we are right now. I have those cut, those angles. I did measure for 1 inch overlap on each end. So now I'm just going to have measure for the leg pieces here, and then I can take a chisel. I'll mark where I want these to be. If I need to shorten these, then I will. So I'm going to get these out of the way right now. Those will be fine as they are. So sometimes lucky is better than good. And after I did my measurements on here, I found out that I need to measure. So I did on purpose. I did a 1 inch here, but I also need to set it back 1 inch from here. So that was not planned, but that's how it's going to be. So I'm going to measure for those. And we could do this a couple ways. I would mark it here instead of doing all the others, all the other ways, or whatever you want to say. Just going to mark it. Yeah. We've got a couple options that we can do to mark these before we start chiseling them out. You can use a marking gauge, or you can just set them up and just use your blade. I'm gonna just use my marking gauge because that's what I like to do.
So I'm just going to do a bunch of chisel work here, going along with my 1 inch to go the length of it, and I've got a 3/4 inch chisel that I'm just going to be using for making sure that the width, because it's, well, happens to be the same width as the legs that I'm putting in, and my oversized mallet that I'm using, which I actually made a new mallet for chisel work after this video, because I was like, well, this does get a little bit cumbersome with the one that I made, so I made a second one. I did not do a video for that though. But yeah, all I'm doing is just chiseling away a little bit at a time, and I'm gonna measure it here after a little bit. But yeah, just just some meticulous work, and I think regardless of how skilled you are or new you are, I think one of the skills that is important is learning how to chisel out something very evenly. And it's good to get back to doing some of the quote unquote basics, or some people call this advanced, because it does get pretty difficult. So it's just time consuming and take some patience.
I'm going to chime in here real quick. So I set my marking gauge here to the depth that I want to be. So I'm just using that to kind of go across and yeah, check my depth. So I'm not exactly there. So I'm just going to keep on chipping away until I get to the depth that I want. If I didn't already, I'm going to emphasize the importance of a sharp tools. So that's why I can kind of cut across the grain here as I shake the entire table.
And you heard me talk about the importance of sharp chisels, and you see what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of running my finger, or keeping my finger along the side there for a consistent depth, and kind of more or less. So I just kind of run the chisel along, keeping my finger there as a guide.
I think we might be at a good moving on point. What do you think? Just gonna do a little uh, just gonna curve the edges a little bit on here, or around the edges, I should say. I've done this historically. I've just taken the disc sander, um, and it'll take care of that material. But since I'm trying to use basic tools on this, there's a lot of different ways you can do this. You can just take a jigsaw and
Which is what I did. And I think I kind of, in that video clip there, I kind of rambled off about something else. But yeah, you can either leave them square, or you can take a jigsaw or anything to kind of round them over. You can, I don't know, make just cut them straight across, whatever you choose to do. or you can just sand down the edges to round them over a little bit. Or if you've got a power tools, or just a random orbit sander that can take off the edge there, just whatever is, yeah, whatever you feel like doing.
So, I mean, same thing with everything else. You can, you know, do your own method of rounding over, or if you choose to do it this or whatever, you can, I guess I'm taking a little hand file and clean this up, and then you can take a little sandpaper and touch it up and everything. And
Yeah, so you just see what I decided to do is just kind of take a hand file and take off, the bulk of everything, and just gonna take a piece of sandpaper, 60 grit sandpaper, and run it over all the corners here, and just make sure that they're nice and round.
all right, get the corners rounded. I think we'll move on. So I'm gonna do like a round over. My last one where I was using all power tools, I used the what did I do? A 3/8 inch round over on both sides. You can use a router bit. I'm just gonna shave away a little bit of it at a time with the clamped in better.
And if you see here, because I didn't do any planing or sanding or anything beforehand, the color variation gives me a guide to show how much of the round over, how much of the material I've removed from the corners and edges and everything. So I'm just kind of using that as a guide, but you can always just kind of run a piece of chalk or just a fine pencil or something like that, just to give you a guide to see how much material you've removed.
So now I'm going with the end grain, or on the end grain. I'm going against the grain. It's going to be a little bit more tricky. You gotta figure out what works for you. If you got a real sharp plane, you can take very light passes and just kind of do the same thing. But you want to be careful of tear out when you're doing if you're doing anything like this. I do have a I'm gonna try to show. You can also just take a chisel and just do a little, I like to, I tend to come up at an angle when I'm doing stuff like this, because you that way you're still going a little bit with the grain. You're not coming completely across, and you're less likely to tear anything out. I got some weird, I think this is generally a no-no, the way that I have the grain on this board, but you deal with what you got sometimes. And yeah, so whatever tool, if you can even just take a rasp if you want to just or a file or sandpaper, if you just want to do a less aggressive round over on this. I'm going to just keep not chiseling away. I'm going to keep planing away at this. because I'm going to try and do the same aggressive round over on the ends so that it's more uniform. So we'll just keep going. Nice light passes. I think we've got a decent round over on both sides here. Do a lot of shaping methods and techniques and stuff. Just sandpaper or a sanding pad or whatever. And I'm just doing the kind of the basic round over right now. I'm not doing anything final. Oh, goodness, I haven't even sanded this thing yet.
So then once I get the rough shape of everything, now I'm gonna do the final sanding and all that stuff. I'll eventually get down to 220 grit when I do everything. But this, I'll do a 60 to get the uniformity, and then I'll end up doing a 110 or 100 grit, and yeah, just keep going from there. But I'm just gonna keep pushing away, just make sure everything's nice and even.
So now I'll move on to the little apron pieces or whatever you want to call them. These are just going to be on the, this will be the bottom side that I'm going to do the little round over. So I'll do a same thing. I'll do an aggressive round over on these. I mean, I don't know if you want to do if you're doing something similar and you choose to do probably just not even an aggressive round over. You just want to, take the edges down. You just run a chisel across, knock the edges down, and then come through with your sandpaper. Keep knocking that over. Come through with your sandpaper and just, give it a nice touch up. I think that'll be good on those. And overs on my. Oh, you can't even see that at all, could you? I might go round overs on the little apron pieces.
And for the legs, I'm not doing a very aggressive round over on these. It's all end grain and everything. It's going to be pretty difficult. You can do whatever you want. Like I said, I chose not to, and so I'm just kind of basically just taking away the sharp edges and doing a little bit of a round over, but nothing too extreme.
The little inner part here. Just gonna take a rasp file. Just gonna take a file, clean up most of this here, and then I'll take that little sandpaper on that. Take this and get it cleaned up, finish that up. So,
just like everything else on this, it's just, time and patience. I just do a little bit as I go, just shaving away, making sure it looks, looks the way that I want it to. I'll go between the file, and then I'll switch eventually over to the just the sandpaper on this stain can or a finish can or whatever that is that I'm using. And I think that's I think that might be 100 grit sandpaper on that one that I'm using. So you see, I just kind of do a variation of techniques just to get it the way I want it to.
this is in my opinion, one of the first items that you should buy if you're going to upgrade to any power tools from just hand tools, is a quality random orbit sander. Don't skimp on this. If you get a cheap one, they will tend to make swirl marks. Ask me how I know. So I am going to, I'm just going to sand these down with a rough grit sandpaper, and then I'll work my way up to probably 220, because I think for the finish, I'm just going to put a finish. I'm not going to do a stain on this one. I think I'm just going to do a finish on it, and so we'll get started from there.
And you can see what I've done. You can buy a bunch of the little grip pads or discs and all that stuff. You can buy those. What I actually got was the lining for drawers. It's that stuff that you put underneath, like a silverware tray or something like that to keep stuff from sliding around. That's what I did. I clamp one side in, and I just kind of put something heavy on the other side. It's not perfect. As you can see, I've got my stuff kind of walking on me, but I'm not clamping it down right now. I actually ended up doing that here in a little bit. But it's just one of the ways that, just one of the techniques that you can use.
To secure your legs to the little stretcher pieces, or whatever you want to call them, there you can do a few things, couple things, whatever. I've actually just drilled through here, just made a, I don't know, 5/16 inch hole through here. I've run a screw through and then just filled it in with some filler or something. You can do that. I am doing a couple dowels, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So I'm just going to do a 1.5 inch dowels on this. So I'm just taking a little piece of sandpaper, round over one end so it'll slide through a little easier. So I'm going to want to make sure that, I've got this, figure where I want to put these. And generally what I like to do, is maybe just come straight down from the inside of this corner here. But I'm afraid with the length and everything that I cut these, I might throw it off a little bit. So I'll probably come just inside here. And then I'll figure out how far up I want to do that, and I'll just measure on the insides of both of my leg pieces. So I'll do that. All right. So what I'm doing for the lower pin is I measured 1/4 of an inch in from the inside curve, and then I'm going 3 inches down. So that's going to be the first pin, or the lower pin. And then the upper pin will do 1 3/4 inches down. Pin. So there's certain tools that I wish that I had bought sooner than I did, and this is one of them, just a joint mate. It was very inexpensive. It's just a doweling jig designed to basically just to line up your spots for your dowels. This is, you can get the center line different depending on which, depending on which size you're using. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm lining up the black brace here, or the stop, I don't know what you want to call it. I'm lining that up with my bottom mark. And it's not going to be necessariness, essentially for me to line that up. But what it's going to do is just make it so that all of my bottom spots are consistent. I don't think it's going to reach for the top hole, but yeah. And all I'm doing right now is I'm just going to drill all the way through on each of them. So yeah, that's what's going to happen right now. So I set my depth a little bit less than the 1.5 inches because I want the pins, or I want the dowels to be protruding a little bit out, so I can sand them down all the way. And I'm just going to drill straight through the holes into the structure pieces here. So I've got my depths set. Well, evidently I was not recording that. But I just was glued up each of the ends, both sides, glued the dowels, then dropped the dowels in, flipped it over, did the other side. So now I'm just gonna put this on here and then clamp it together. All right. Well, I guess that this is always a moment of truth, right?
And now I just take a flush cut saw and cut off the excess dowel pieces coming off.
Well, looks like a stool. Um, you might argue that the 220 sanding probably didn't need to be done because I'm going to have to do it again to touch up. But I do like to do like a final sanding uh, before glue up, and that way I like all the little nooks and crannies are touched, and especially the underneath here. Then I can come back through and just do another 220 sanding here before we apply our finish. All right. So just did some cleanup. Let's say you get to this point and you've got a little wobble in your stool here. You probably want to take, this is not an aggressive sandpaper, but you might want to get something a little more aggressive, depending on how bad your wobble is, because if you're doing this without all the nice special tools and whatever, chances are unless you did it really well, you might have a little bit of a wobble in you. But yeah, so you might want something, I don't know, even a 60, 80 grit or something like that, if 100's not going to work for you. And just kind of same thing. You could just sand down the high side or low side, whichever way you want to look at it. Or you just same thing, just tape this on there, and just don't pull it up, don't tear it up like that. That's a bad thing, huh? And catch the bottom. But yeah, just so I'm going to be putting some spray lacquer on here, but I'm also going to be putting little feet on the bottom, just some anti-slip covers, and so I don't want to get any finish on those, so I'm just going to put a little bit of tape on each of them. Normally I throw down a sheet of parchment paper here. I'm not spraying the feet, so I'll just spray the undercoating, and then I'll flip it over. Sawdust there. I'll flip it over and then get the top and just let it rest on the feet here.
So this is the stuff I like. I've used it on, picture frames and other projects and stuff. So if I'm going to use a spray lacquer instead of, a polyurethane or a water-based finish or something like that, if I'm going to do any spray lacquer, this is the stuff I'll use. And it's at least 3 coats. You might need to put on more depending on how it looks. And if you leave it for more than a couple hours, you got to do a little sanding in between, but
So here it is after a few coats of the spray lacquer, and I still haven't put any feet, any anti-slip feet on here. I'm not sure exactly which type of I want to use. If I want to use the same thing I did on the other one or something different. So I will make that decision. Otherwise, it is finished. So thank you for watching.